Well, welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I flubbed a little bit and I forgot to switch what I needed to switch. So I screwed the pooch on that one. But either way, we don't really need the opening today because I've got you and that's all I really need. As you can see, I've got some new digs here. We have no Mark Pellegrino in the house, but we'll be okay today. Let me see if we got some comments. Oh, we do. Mike sounds very different today, Ian Gilmore said. Is that a bad thing or a good thing, Ian? Please let me know. It might be because I've switched now. I've got a webcam operating. So if the mic sounds funky, then let me know. But if it sounds mic through the mic, I sound like I'm inside of a tin can. Let's see if I can't fix that problem here. Let's see. Edit mic settings. My mic settings are all the same. I don't know why that would be occurring. I don't know. Maybe the webcam did it. Either way, I can't fix it right now because I'm on the air. I apologize. Hopefully, let me see. Maybe if I move it a little bit. Okay. Either way, I don't know what the hell I wanted to talk about. You guys got me all flustered here today. First things first, I've got a great episode of the Michael Liebowitz show coming out tomorrow. Put it out there tomorrow morning with Mr. Jim Valiant and Mr. Sheldon Richman as we discuss ethics, the initiation of force, individual rights. I think it's a really, really good episode. I also will have one coming out next week. I interviewed today a professor on communications about moral panic. So that should be a great episode as well. That'll be out on Sunday. And please remember that super chats, super stickers are all very, very much appreciated. Ian Gilmore, you're really paying attention to a lot of stuff. Yes, I'm going with the blue screen from now on. This is actually really me. There's no AI involved here, no AI behind me. It's just a blue screen. I do that because, look, now because I moved, the camera moved, and now you can see this. Okay, so you see the camera follows me around. That's fine, too. And now it followed me again, and I'm having a hard time. Thank you, Ian. You've really got me all screwed up here today. But we do have some actual topics to discuss. And amongst those topics are... Let me see if I can't turn, because now this is going to annoy me. Ian, you really messed me up here, buddy. I know you didn't do it on purpose, but nevertheless... I'll have to turn off the face tracking. I don't know how to do that. It did it yesterday on its own. I'll figure it out. I really don't want to sit here though all day and talk about the mic quality, the image quality, and the blue screen. We could do that another time. The first thing I want to talk about is actually, and please remember super chats and super stickers. They're greatly appreciated. So this morning, I read an article from Axios that I thought was just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful article. And it was about how Democrats better be careful. And Mark and I discussed this a little bit yesterday. The Democrats better be careful because they may end up with a party takeover in the way that the Republicans had their party taken over. And whereas the Republicans had their party taken over by Trump, the Democrats may be getting taken over by the Democratic Socialists, or let's just call them what they are. Let's call them socialists, right? So they actually identify 6 stages to this. They've got, hold on one second here. 6 stages that they have are: first, recoil; second, squint; third, rationalize; 4, submit; 5, amplify; and 6, purge. And they say that each stage has language that's specific to it. And the article's I don't know, kind of a warning to Democrats. So, but the stage one recoil, they say they did first, they hate this idea. They denounce it. And they point to Lindsey Graham, who calling Trump a kook. Ted Cruz called him a pathological liar. So that was the first step. Now in the second stage, it's squinting. They support, but they don't look. They'll say something like, "Oh, I haven't seen that tweet yet." When asked about it, that's the kind of the go-to response. And then there's the other side is worse. They talk about as well. Then they move on to the rationalization. This is the yes but stage. Then they refer to this, and I've heard this more times than I can remember. I don't love the style, but the judges, the tax cuts, the border, he's a fighter. This is when they start to sort of allow and accommodate, make room for, that sort of thing. I forgot to share this with Mark. Let me knock that out of the way right now. That sort of thing. So then they move on to stage 4, which is submission. Dissent at this point becomes career-ending. They point to Kevin McCarthy, of course, saying that Trump owns responsibility for the events of January 6th, and then a few weeks later he was down there kissing the ring of Trump, and of course then it didn't save him anyway. He still was booted out of the whole thing. So then they got the amplify phase, which is they talk about fully adopt the vocabulary, the style, and the maximal claims. Basically, try to out-Trump Trump. And I think we've seen that as well. They point to J.D. Vance, who at one point, was referring to Trump as Hitler, and then switched up pretty quickly. And then they talk about, you either fully accept Trump or you get exiled. Point to Jeff Flake, Senator Bob Corker, Liz Cheney, Bill Cassidy, all the folks who sort of wouldn't kiss the ring and then ended up kicked out. That's the purging phase. So now we move on to the Democrats. And I found all that very insightful and very interesting, what they just talked about. But they talk about, Zohran Mamdani, the socialist. All the candidates he endorsed won, while the candidate endorsed by House Leader Jeffries, of course, did not win. And he talked about the language that's coming in as well. You have, it's not about socialism. It's about affordability. And they put that right in line with it. It's not the tweets. It's the judges. They talk about that's textbook stage 3 stuff. So they say, though, that socialism within the Democratic Party has no enforcer yet. As, Trump was the enforcer for the Republicans, that they don't really have that amongst the Democratic Socialists at this point. They don't have the person that's going to kick people out. They also say, though, that they don't have the media infrastructure to promote the socialism. And there I'm going to push back a little bit, because the mainstream media certainly goes gaga over Bernie Sanders, AOC. I haven't been watching the news. I get all my news through print, so I haven't seen them doing the same with Mamdani, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was occurring. Now, they say that what to watch. They say we want to watch the language. Do swing district Democrats start saying Democratic Socialists without flinching? They want, laundering. They want to know how long is it going to take for the mainstream Democrats like Jeffries and Bernie, or rather Jeffries and Schumer, to start endorsing these folks. And I'm very, and then we're going to look for the retirements. I'm very interested in what you guys, you guys are, Subby, you can't keep telling me this. This is going to drive me out of my mind with telling me how the background is. I know the background's blue. I get it. I love you guys, but it's a change. Everything doesn't always have to be the same, right? I've deliberately changed the background to blue. The funny thing is I told Subby this morning when I showed him on the screen. Justin Amash, Ben Sass, Paul Ryan, etc. All have had their goodbyes, kicked out. Akira Felix wants to know if the mic is on. Yes, Akira, it's on. Ian Gilmore wants to know if anyone has good ideas on how to resist these takeovers. Worse groups seem to have an advantage somehow. Uh, one of the things that I've heard that sort of encourages these takeovers is, oh my God, I'm turning off the comments, guys. Bye. Sorry. I can't. I just I've said I don't want to keep hearing about it, and then somebody wants to tell me again about it. I'm over it, guys. Please, please. Had I known that we were going to have all this hubbub because I've changed the background, I may not have done it. Is that really what we want to talk about, guys? Come on. We could talk about other stuff. Yes, Ian, you're right. I should ignore the chat. The problem is I don't want to be the type of host that ignores the audience. I want to actually engage the audience and have you guys talking with me. And I want to make that sort of the focal point of the show, is that we're engaging in discussions, right? That's what I want. So I've heard it opined that part of the problem is the primary system. And I don't really know how to fix that, because I'd be opposed to any mandates about what we're going to do as far as the primary system goes. So basically, if you only have Republicans voting in Republican primaries, then what you're going to end up with are the base electing the candidates. And if you have the base electing the candidates, you're going to basically get what we're getting now, is where the MAGA wins on the right and the Socialist Democrats win on the left. I wouldn't be for the federal government stepping in to do anything about that, of course, but that's one possibility. I really think it all comes down, Ian, to ideas and how to spread them. I do think that we are at a disadvantage, though, when spreading ideas, because I don't think it's just the primaries either. I think it's ideas. Now, our disadvantage in spreading ideas has to do with communication, right? We are honest. We are logical. We are methodical in our communications. But people, a lot of people, probably most people, respond to emotion. They respond to absolute statements, guarantees. They want an enemy that they can fight. And so when you have Democratic Socialists out there critiquing, the evil rich, for instance, the corporations, big tech, big pharma, all these big enemies that are somehow screwing you, right? And then on the right, of course, you have the immigrants. They're taking your jobs. The globalists are fucking you over. So when you have all of that, and we come in and we just want to make logical arguments about morality and economics, it doesn't really work. We need to develop, and I'm trying this myself, what I want to do is learn how to connect emotionally while speaking with logic. Not an easy task. Of course, Aristotle, told us the way: ethos, pathos, and logos. You want to be logical, you want to be emotional, and you want to have character. But actually combining those things to be effective is no easy task. I'm working on it myself, but I think that that's key, is communication. Now, some people say no, it doesn't matter. I disagree. I think communication is vital. When Brett McCall, my friend, saw Donald Trump speaking initially in 2015, he looked at me and said, he's got a chance of winning. This might catch on, because his method of communicating. Donald Trump is, in my view, a total buffoon, but you can't deny his ability to connect with these people. You're talking about a billionaire born with a silver spoon in his mouth, who somehow was able to convince his audience that he cared about them. Middle class people, that he cares for them. The poor people, that he cares about them, that he is on their side. That requires communication skill. So that, I think, Ian, is key to what we do. James Valiant said, what makes a base? And he says, the background radiation is altruism. Reason cannot thrive under those environmental conditions. I don't know, Jim. I mean, I know that is sort of the go-to. You have to overcome the altruism, and I'm not dismissing it out of hand. I just don't know that's all there is to it. I think that there's a lot more. And I think, for instance, that most human beings want to act in their own interest. They want to do what's best for themselves. So, given that's the case, you communicate what's in their best interest to do, what's in the best interest of their families, how free markets are good for them. And also we can communicate on the moral level to show that it's okay. It's right that you act in your own best interest. It's good that you act in your own best interest. And I think that's something we can do. I'm not saying it's an easy task. I'm not even saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that these are some things that we perhaps could be doing. And I certainly am trying to improve at it myself. Of course, getting aggravated with my audience may not be the best way to go about it. But I got to tell you, so I woke up this morning and I knew I had an interview at 9 that I had to prepare for. I knew I had this show to prepare for. So there was a lot for me to do already. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot to get done in this quick period of time. So then I get a text from my boss, just explaining that there's this vast job or vast network of jobs that we may have to do. So that all added to the equation. And so I was a little rushed around. There he is, my boss right there. I was a little rushed this morning. So then, I'm just learning how to deal with the new technology, coordinate the microphone, the webcam, the background. And then I come on here and everyone's like, oh, you sound different. The background is blue after somebody else just said the background was blue. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's just a bit too much for me. I get a little overwhelmed sometimes. I apologize. But so that's what I've been dealing with so far today. I also was thinking about, and this kind of touches, I think, on what Jim says in on Ian's question as well. And that's a columnist once told me that and I probably mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again, that my writing wasn't getting traction because he said that there's two things you have to consider, right? There's the timely and the timeless. He said the timely is the stuff that is getting attention right now, that people are interested right at this moment, the concrete everyday stories. Timeless are important things, but they can be written about at any time. So for instance, if we're going to write about egoism versus altruism, right, that's not a concrete case that's affecting somebody in their view right now, right? Their taxes going up is. And you can see that in what catches attention. I mean, this Anthony Fauci stuff that we're going to get into a little bit, not too much, but a little bit later, and his diary, everyone's like, oh, they got to see that. And, let's not talk about the type of philosophy that leads up to an Anthony Fauci and leads up to a Donald Trump and leads up to the lockdowns. We're just going to focus on the fact that there's inconsistencies in Anthony Fauci's statements, right? So that's another challenge, is overcoming the immediacy and speaking in terms of what's going to be beneficial over the long term. That's another challenge. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the €5. I really appreciate it. I think my brother Subby has left. Subby, have you left the room? Because I told you to stop asking about the blue screen. Yeah, so the bottom line is the Republicans and Democrats are neither going in good directions. The Republicans have this populism, MAGA, angry thing going on, and the Democrats have the socialism, and both translate into more state power, right? And that's what we don't want. We don't want more state power. So, I read that article, and I got to say, there was a dearth of news this morning. There was the standard Iran thing where Trump is now saying that they're begging for a deal and, all of that. So, there was that. There was stuff about Netanyahu visiting the White House, but there really wasn't much. But I came across an article in Jacobin, so Akira is going to be very happy about this. I came across an article in Jacobin about how socialists aren't wrong about human nature. It was by a guy named Matt McManus, who I've debated in the past. And I'm going to reach out to him again to debate about something he said here today in this article. But anyways, his claim basically is that conservatives say that socialists are naive about human nature. Conservatives do that. He references Thomas Sowell's idea of the constrained vision versus the unlimited vision, where, he says that the left thinks that human nature is pliable, that, we're environmentally determined. And there has been stuff coming from the left about that sort of thing, from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, for instance, Karl Marx, that were, determined by the material factors of production. So there is stuff that goes with that. But he says, no, we're not really, and I'll just put this up here so we can read it. He says conservative critics are right that some on the left have indulged in excessive hopes about the intellectual and above all moral improvements socialism would affect in ordinary people, but their arguments are exaggerated in suggesting all or even most socialists are excessively naive about human nature. In fact, one of the best arguments for socialism is precisely that by breaking down concentration of power and protecting the vulnerable against domination and exploitation, it could do a better job of guarding against humanity's enduring flaws. It does this at the same time as it makes greater ethical demands of social institutions, even while recognizing that individuals will often fall short of them. Guarding against humanity's enduring flaws, and it's going to protect the vulnerable against domination. I gotta say, I find this argument so bizarre, because a lot of this, he talks in this article about dispersing power, right? It's pouring rain here and the dogs are going bananas. So anyway, so he talks about you want to disperse power. You don't want power to be accumulated in private companies or the government. And so you have to kind of break this up. The problem is, by granting the government to break up what he considers unnecessary economic power, what's happening is you're necessarily given government power. The difference being that the government has the power of the sword, of the gun, whereas private companies don't. So you're giving the power to the wrong people. Not that it's right to give companies power, but it's a different type of power. One power, for instance, has to be earned in the market, and it's also not a compulsory power. The other power is earned by pandering, and they have, like I said, the power of the gun to threaten you, to subdue you. So it seems just absurd to me to first of all, to equate the two, and second, to then grant the power to an organization that can imprison us if they want to. He then says it's long past time that liberals acknowledge the socialist insight that the human inclination to injustice makes economic democracy as necessary as political democracy. Okay. First of all, I don't know that humans... we have a $1.99 super sticker from Kathy Cassio, thank you. And we have a $2.99 super sticker from Gary Menard, thank you. So, when people ask me this, are humans inherently good or inherently bad? It drives me batty. I don't think that we're either. I think we're human beings. And I think the morality that we adopt, the morality that's objective, has to be based on what we are as human beings. And then to say that we have a natural inclination to act, against that, I don't buy it at all. So I don't buy there's this human inclination to injustice. If you want to say that throughout history there's been humans who have behaved unjustly, I would agree 100%. That doesn't mean there's a natural inclination in humans to be unjust. Thank you very much, Nicole Hingle, for $2 super sticker. The other thing is that you're going to solve injustice with economic democracy. I'd love to know his definition of justice, because how it's just to take from one to give to another, to regulate businesses so that they can no longer compete, to place price controls and the use of force and do all the other things that these people advocate. Clearly, these are not just. Clearly, they are injustices. Right? Clearly, they are. So, I mean, he can make that argument all he wants. Now, to his fundamental point, there's actually two ways I want to address his fundamental point. Are socialists and leftists wrong about human nature? And I'm going to say it's going to depend on the leftists. Obviously, there's different views, but I will say that they have had this idea that human beings are environmentally determined, and that if you give people better environments, you're going to come up with better people. And they felt that the government was capable of enacting policies that would create these better governments, at the tip of the sword or the barrel of a gun. That's the first thing. And so, I don't want to get too much into that. I think Thomas Sowell has done a good job of repudiating that. But where they get human nature absolutely wrong, 100% wrong, and it goes back to his idea of justice. On what are you basing justice? On what moral theory? Is it a moral theory that's based on human beings, on what we are? Is it derived from human nature? Is it fitting to the facts of reality? Is it based on observation and induction, or is it just your feelings, right? What are human rights? What are individual rights? Why is it wrong to use force? All of these things are based on human nature. And had he had a legitimate view of human nature, then had he reasoned properly from it, he would not be a socialist. So in that sense, socialists necessarily have a flawed view of human nature, and so does Professor McManus. So I'm curious as to what everybody would, think about that. I want to read some of the comments. Also, by the way, anybody have any questions, please ask. Let's see here. Akira Felix says, look at Mamdani. Champagne socialists are connecting with people too. Greg Doherty says, emotions sum up our evaluations over a lifetime. It's a difficult task to identify, rationally program the emotions to target for appeal. Akira Felix says that the liberals tend to overemphasize alienation and end up disregarding free will entirely. One of the reasons he hated alleged atheists more than religious people after becoming an atheist. And then he references John Rawls' theory of justice. So, I do have to fix this camera tracking thing, though, Ian. You're absolutely correct, because that'll drive me crazy. I do think it's neat, though. I was so fascinated to watch this camera following me around the room. Very, very interesting to me. I have to send Subby an apology for snapping at him. That's what I'm doing now. That's why I looked down, and that's why the camera followed me. Tell him. Well, okay. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, that would be fantastic. It would help the flow of the discussion go. I say this all the time, and I still really don't get many questions. I don't know. It would be helpful, because I am here alone. But if you don't, I can't put it all on you. I'm the host of the show. There were some other things that I wanted to mention, and now I can't quite remember what they were. Well, I guess we can talk about this Fauci stuff. Oh, look at this. The camera loves me. Thanks, Nicole, and thank you for this super chat. Akira likes the camera quality. So do I. This whole technology thing is just baffling to me. So I went at first. I wanted to get a new mic, the new microphone. So I go to buy the mic, but then the mic needs a mic stand, right? Okay, I need a mic stand, and then I needed an interface, which I'd never heard of, didn't know what it was. Then I needed some sort of an adapter to plug into the interface with the microphone. Then there was something I needed to turn off because it had to do with creating music. So I did that. Then I decided I needed a webcam. And the reason I wanted to get a webcam was so that I could have a blue background like this. So I could just put my blue screen behind me and have it. I didn't want to keep using the sort of AI generated stuff. I don't like the coming in and out. So I wanted to get a webcam. So I went out, we got the webcam. Then yesterday, I'm trying to hook the webcam up, but there's nothing to plug it into. So now I had to go get this other thing, this dock. So then I hooked it up, and I'm learning how to adjust the webcam. Do I want it to go up, down, focus narrowly on me so it's not catching out, all the background stuff. And I was able to do that, but it's quite an adventure. And so, I'm learning now. I just found out there's a camera that goes with the webcam that I have to fix. I got to tell the dogs to shut up. And I'm going to figure that out as well. But one thing I am encouraged about is that I get to write all this stuff out, or write it off rather, when I go to do my taxes next time. Megan says, how am I prepping for the capitalist convention? Interesting. I know I have to give a speech at the capitalist convention. I'm not yet sure even what I'm going to speak about. That type of stuff, I really turn over to my subconscious, and I let it percolate for a while. I don't really know exactly what I want to talk about. Broadly speaking, I want to talk about the transformative power of capitalism. I think that's kind of the direction that I want to go, but I'm not positive yet. So I'll let this percolate for a while. The convention's in September. By the time September comes around, my subconscious will have been working on this so long that when it comes time to really focus on it, I figure I'll have a wealth of material to draw from. I've done this with writing in the past. I've done it for preparing shows. I let my subconscious work on things because, I mean, what am I going to do? I could write a speech right now for the convention that could turn out to be totally unnecessary and totally sort of irrelevant by the time it comes. Well, that's not good. Plus, it's going to take a lot of time. We talk about opportunity cost. I'll be spending an awful lot of time focused on that in order to write it, which I don't want to do right now. I'm focused on building the show. So I'll let my subconscious do the work. Come September, I'll start working very hard on the speech, and then by the time it comes around, I'll be ready to go, and I will knock it out of the park. And no, Megan, there will not be graphs. I promise you, I will not use graphs. I wonder why dogs are so afraid of the rain. I don't know, but my dogs are. By the way, we're at 942 subscribers, folks. Help us get to 1,000. I want to get to 1,000 by next week. I just learned that Nikos Soterakopoulos got to 20,000 subscribers in a year. If he can get 20,000 in a year, we can get 58 in a week. So all of you, I know you all have social media. I know you do. Go to the Rational Alternative YouTube channel, grab the link, share it with your online network. Tell them what a great show it is. Encourage them to watch. Encourage them to subscribe. Let's get to 1,000. Okay. So, Anthony Fauci. Now, let me put on my chapstick here. Anthony Fauci, I gotta be honest. He's not somebody that has interested me a lot. The COVID stuff, you got to remember, I was in prison at the time, so I wasn't dealing with that out here. I was more concerned with how they were handling it. I haven't asked them yet, Akira. I'm going to. I was concerned with how the prison was running their COVID protocols. I was concerned with getting out of prison. I was concerned with writing my book. I mean, I follow the news every day, don't get me wrong. It just wasn't my top concern. I did lose all trust in Anthony Fauci, though, when he initially said nobody needs to be wearing masks, and then subsequently said he lied and said you don't need to be wearing masks. And his point was that he didn't want people going out and buying masks, and then the people that needed them, the hospital workers, etc., then they wouldn't have them. The fact that he would lie about that led me not to trust him. So let me just state that. The stuff that I'm seeing now, it's very difficult for me to tell whether it's political theater. And that's why I'm very interested in what the audience says, anybody that has followed this thing. Because Rand Paul, who's been like a dog with a bone when it comes to going after Anthony Fauci, and they talk a lot about things that I really don't understand. But evidently there's these writings that everybody's referring as Fauci's diary, but I don't really think it was a diary. It sounds like it was personal notes, in my view. So Fauci, they subpoenaed these, I guess. Rand Paul releases them. From what I could tell, Rand Paul has selectively released them. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I got from AI. It said that be careful because these are politically motivated documents, although they're true. And then they're quoting him as he's writing during the time where it appears saying different in private to himself than he is in public. For instance, saying that they knew already that it didn't come from a wet market, that the wet market was an amplifier, but they say he was actually saying in public, that it was definitely the wet market. According to the AI syntheses that I had done, they say, well, that's a little sketchy. That's not exactly, it is what he said, but it's not exactly what he meant. And then there's the whole idea of whether it came from a lab or did it come from natural causes. And, he downplayed that at the time, but in private, he said there is a chance that it came from the lab. He, of course, didn't say it did come from a lab. Now, I know for myself when taking notes, right? And this is why I'm a bit skeptical. I'll sometimes, when I'm writing, play devil's advocate. I'll write down opposing viewpoints. I'll challenge myself. I'll ask questions. And I don't know his method. I don't know what he's referring to when he's writing. So it makes me skeptical. Also, the fact that it's politically motivated makes me skeptical. And one thing that really, really makes me skeptical about the whole thing is how certain so many people are. Right? So many people are so certain that they know. And when people become that certain about stuff that I'm very confident they don't know about. For instance, you're reading about, the cleavage sites and the virus. I don't even know what the hell that means. There's so many things to look into to know whether it's natural origin or whether it happened in a lab. I can't sift through that. And I don't think most of the people commenting can either. They go as far as saying, oh, come on now. There was a lab in Wuhan. The thing came out in Wuhan. Therefore, you got to know it came from that lab. I mean, that's just common sense, but it's not common sense. And oftentimes when people follow that line of reasoning, it leads to very bad places, very bad conclusions, right? What I know, I interviewed a reporter on this a while back, and what he told me is that basically the majority of scientists think it's of natural origin, but the intelligence community is kind of split on it. So the intelligence community, some in the intelligence community have ruled with, I believe, a low degree of certainty, maybe it's changed since last time I saw it, that it came from the lab. And of course, in Podcastistan, the influencer class jumps all over that. Aha, look, it came from a lab. The fact that Dave Smith pontificates and discusses this kind of stuff when the dude doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground, whatever. But so I'm curious what you guys think about the Anthony Fauci story. I would like for you to tell me what you think. I'm ultimately not real strong one way or the other. I am suspicious that it's Rand Paul leading the way here. I don't particularly trust Mr. Paul. Ian Gilmore says we'll never know because the Chinese have blocked or destroyed the evidence. We need to know one way or the other. Ian, you were probably right. So they also said that Fauci lied in public about, the mortality rates compared to what he knew in private. I don't trust Fauci or his critics either, Akira. I think you're onto something. One thing that I find hilarious is when people say, because Marjorie Taylor Greene is, she's the medical expert, and she's on X today, and she says, COVID is a flu. No, it's a different virus, dummy. Like, I know that. Flu is influenza. COVID is a different virus. Flu is short for influenza. I understand that in common parlance, people say that they've got the flu for whatever sickness they happen to have. But when you are saying it's just a flu, and you're going to criticize medical professionals for not using that idiotic language, I can dismiss you out of hand at that point. When I used to hear that in prison, it's a flu, it's a flu. No, it's not. Ian Gilmore says one major problem is that people take imprecise or even wrong statements from people they don't like and call it a lie. Those are different things. Yes, Ian, they are. Greg Doherty said only recently did science develop a strong theory of the origin of AIDS. This stuff is complicated. Yes. Do I think there was collusion between Fauci and other government officials? I don't know what you mean by collusion. You're going to have to tell me what exactly you mean. I mean, obviously he was having meetings in private where I'm sure they discussed things that they didn't talk about in public. Do I think that the common cold is usually a rhinovirus, but there's also kind of common colds that are, I believe, COVID viruses as well. But the rhinovirus, I think, is the main cause of the common cold, but it's definitely not influenza. Lone Dissenter says, you know the people who call sports radio and propose really stupid trades, obviously knowing nothing about the business of sports? Yeah. He said, that's most laymen with strong opinions on science and economics. Oh, I agree. You know, and look, I've been guilty of it too when it comes to sports. You know, I'd say, damn, I wish... do you think that Anthony Fauci, okay, let me just say this. Sometimes I want a team to trade for a certain person, but I really don't know if that's the best decision for the team, given their money, their draft prospects, their future, the chemistry on the team. You know, I just see a big name and I'd like him on my team. Tom Pentelow says collusion equals cash. That's kind of an imprecise meaning of collusion. But if you're asking me if I think that Fauci deliberately did things to line his pockets and colluded with members of government to do so, I have no idea. And somebody will have to prove that to me, you know, in order for me to accept that. Why did the flu virtually? Here comes Scott Schiff with the typical MAGA question. Why did the flu virtually disappear in 2020 if they weren't counting flu as COVID? Well, there were social distancing that was taking place, Scott, at the time. People were masking up. A lot of public places were closed. People were taking more precautions. I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't know. But, I mean, is that your reasoning process? You know, well, flu disappeared, so go look at this. They must be counting it. That's not reasoning, dude. I'm sorry, man. Like, I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. That's just not reasoning. It just isn't. Well, I know this, look at this. This disappeared. And I ultimately don't know. But I do know that there was social distancing, people were wearing masks, public places were largely closed, and that would seem to me to largely stop the spread of flu. Now, if you have evidence beyond that, if you've got, for instance, doctors on tape saying they're misdiagnosing something, or if you've got video, or if you've got doctored reports, or if you've got actual allegations of specifics where people had the flu but were diagnosed with COVID. No, that's not, this is the problem with this. And this is why it's like the boy who cried wolf, right? This is why I'm skeptical, because this is the type of reasoning. It's part of the suspicion of Fauci and how he flamed fears to push for lockdowns. Dude, if you're suspicious that COVID is the flu based on nothing, then your suspicions mean nothing to me. And if that's your argument, then it's weak. Yes, it'll play very big in a MAGA chat room. It'll play very big in right-wing groups who call themselves objectivists and say that Donald Trump is the savior. Yes, they're all going to be like, you know what, that makes sense. But you know what, it doesn't. You know, there's something you could do, and I do this myself. I'll take my arguments and argue with artificial intelligence. And I'll say, assess this argument. I won't even tell them it's mine. Assess this argument for logic and accuracy. Do that, Scott. Like, before coming on here and making some ridiculous argument about the flu disappearing and how could that happen if they weren't misdiagnosing. Like, take your argument to AI. Scott, that's not relevant. Tell them that your theory, Scott, is that because of this, they're likely misdiagnosing flu and calling it COVID. Yes, Akira Felix, he's making something out of nothing. I know. Well, Scott, I mean, personal advice. Take it or leave it. Don't really care. You have a tendency to think people dismiss you because they disagree with you. People dismiss you because your arguments are bad. You're very persistent in pushing them, and it becomes annoying. Bad arguments, pushed and pushed and pushed, are annoying. People don't want to engage in them. Gary Menard says there seems to have been a strong element of unreason and emotion that COVID and the government lockdowns caused it to surface en masse. Sure. And I mean, social media helps with that. Trump helped with that. The liberals helped with that. Fauci helped with that. I mean, there's a lot of factors that came together that would sort of coalesce to create that. You know what I mean? So I can kind of understand that. Let me see if I've missed any comments. Scott is making something out of nothing. COVID triggered something in many. History books will expound on this in the future. It's easier to stop the spread of flu than it is to stop the spread of COVID. I'll tell you what. I think that I'm somebody, and I'm speculating here. I don't know for certain. In February of 2020, I got sick. I was in prison, and I got sick like I've never been sick before. Coughing nonstop. I lost my voice for like a month. I lost my sense of taste. I lost my sense of smell. I couldn't eat. It was awful. And I went to get, they didn't yet test for COVID. It wasn't real big, especially not in the prison system. And I went to medical and they tested me for the flu, for influenza, because they did have that. My test came back inconclusive. So because it was inconclusive, and I said, look, test me again, because I don't think I have the flu. Like, you're going to quarantine me based on an inconclusive test. But anyways, they quarantined me. I think there's a very real chance that I had COVID, that I was an early case of COVID that was misdiagnosed as the flu. So that could be a case of it going the other way. I ultimately don't know. I don't know if I had the flu, I had COVID, I had something else. I don't know. What I do know is that I like reasonable arguments that are presented with evidence. Bring evidence. I will change my mind about virtually anything if enough evidence. I'll say anything. You present enough evidence for me that I'm a brain in a vat, I'll accept it. But simply wanting me to assume I'm a brain in a vat and starting to argue from there as if it's a legitimate claim, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to accept that they're misdiagnosing the flu for COVID based on a decrease in the one and an increase in the other. What do we got? We got any other questions? Megan says maybe we should talk about viruses on some weekend. You were going to do the vast majority of the talking, Dr. Mommy, because I know very little about viruses. She says she's not sure what the question is, though. The question concerned, I believe it started with, I mentioned how Marjorie Taylor Greene said COVID is a flu, and I pointed out, no, COVID is a different virus than influenza, and then Scott Schiff implied, well, I like numbers. He hasn't officially admitted he's Scott Schiff, but we all know he is. He stated that it's a reasonable assertion, basically, to say that because there was such a decrease in flu during the COVID years or during 2020, it's reasonable to speculate that they were misdiagnosing the flu and claiming it was COVID. So that's the claim. All right. I'm going to find out what you guys had to say to yesterday's question, which I don't remember what it is. I always forget this question, but let me find it. Oh, we're up to 943 subscribers. Lone Dissenter says, I listen to people who can actually tell me what the flu is, how it causes illness, how it transmits, and spends all their productive time on it. I agree. Now, people are going to tell you, oh, so you trust the experts. You know, look, if I'm having bad chest pains, I'm calling an ambulance. I'm not calling Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I will say that. All right, let's see. Any comments from yesterday? Yes, there are 5. Okay, nobody seems to have answered whatever the question was yesterday. It was about Marty Supreme. I didn't think there would be an answer. I thought it was a little presumptuous of Mr. Pellegrino to assume that the audience had seen Marty Supreme. All right, what can be my capitalist thought of the day? My capitalist thought of the day is this. And it's got to do with what we talked about earlier in promoting capitalism. Logos, pathos, ethos were Aristotle's 3 things he said make for effective communication. Think about ethos, character. If we're going to be making arguments for our positions, we need to be able to back them up with evidence, with facts. We have to limit our speculation, and if we're speculating, just concede that we're speculating up front. We don't want to present our opinion as facts, and we don't want to be making arguments based on our emotions and not based on what the evidence actually shows. We need to be truth tellers, truth detectors. This means staying informed. It means doing our research. It means using our rational faculty. If we wish to convince others, we have to be credible, and that is a part of character. It's a part of ethos. Okay, what will be the question? Do you like, here's the question. Please, everybody go to YouTube and answer the question at the Rational Alternative channel. Do you like the blue background better than the AI background? Please let me know. Thank you very much, everybody. We will be back. Mark will be here tomorrow with us. And until then, please check your premises.